Hey, what's up? It's Nicole Brewster, also known as Coco. Thank you for tapping into the Elevate Him podcast, where we have tons of topics on how to support our men. All right, everybody. Thank you for tapping into the Elevate Him podcast show. I am Nicole, and tonight I have a dear friend with me, Jillian Henderson. We go way, way back, actually, like junior high school. So we definitely have some history. And I wanted to have her on. She is so much involved in the mental health field. She is a mother of 3 boys. She is just a super inspiration, and I just love her to pieces. And I'm just glad that she's here to share with us tonight just some dimensions of what's going on in mental health. And she's in Montana, so this is why we're doing the Zoom, but I'm so glad to see you, and thanks for coming on. So if you want to share a little bit about you, we'll tap into the conversation.
Great. Well, first, thank you for having me. It's so great to see you, even if it's in the virtual world. We go way, way back. So it's really nice to see your face tonight. Thanks for having me. So I am a licensed clinical social worker in the field of mental health every day. I also am a licensed addiction counselor. And then I also hold a mental health professional counseling credential in the state of Montana. It's very specific to our state. But currently, I work for Western Montana Mental Health Center, which is the largest agency that provides community mental health to people in northwestern Montana. And so my role there now is a clinical supervisor, but I have worked in this field, as you know, since, 2009.
I remember when you were going through all like your courses and just how you were managing at that time, just so focused and so involved. Like this was definitely your passion and definitely the field that you wanted to go into. So to see you go over all these hurdles to get there and all these degrees, I mean, you nailed it. So super proud of you, because that's a big role, especially with mental health, as we know. There's a lot of stigmas, like we've shared, a lot of, we would say maybe addiction, depression, anxiety, all these things. And it feels like sometimes people get not diagnosed, they get kind of misdiagnosed. And so as you start to see the community falling apart in areas, it's almost like the blame game. And so when you have spoke with obviously clients before you got into your current position, what did that kind of look like? I mean, I know everybody's different, but for mental health, from your standpoint, what did that look like?
In regards to working directly
with the client,
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we think about, gender and the norms that surround gender specifically, and then the idea when we think about, a therapist or counseling, we naturally think that women are the predominant gender to seek that out specifically. But we also know that mental health is not biased.
Right. No one's exempt. You're right.
It, is a disease of our mind, and it can be something that can be assisted with treatment and medication. And we also look at it as a recovery standpoint as well. But I do, know that men are less likely to seek out services when needing support. And I think it really goes back to just that, stigma, right, around mental health in general. Men are just as likely to suffer from a mental health issue as women, but they're often not reported or treated properly, right? And so, men are also subject to many societal expectations, ones that encourage them to be self-sufficient and avoid asking for help. Even when they really, really need it. And oftentimes, like we know, it might be too late.
Yeah. And you know, when I looked at how I wanted to really reform, elevate him, and how I wanted to bring that up is it wasn't just about, oh, I'm going to make them look good in a suit. That was just kind of the fun piece of, the whole idea, but to really get them involved with themselves, to really get them to see themselves in a different view, not only on the physical side, but to encourage and empower to take special care, to, recognize different things that they're going through, asking for help, getting those resources. Now, do you feel like, so let me ask this question maybe. When you're looking at a client who is male, do you feel like they know what they need? Because sometimes they don't know maybe what it is. Maybe they can't explain it. Maybe they just don't have an idea that they need help, and so they've ignored things. So what would that kind of look like? I mean, treating somebody and them not knowing what they need. Can you get that from your client?
Absolutely. It really depends on what the motivation to access services are. A lot of the times, unfortunately, with males, it's an external motivator. Sometimes it's because they're incarcerated, they've gotten in trouble with the law, their naggy wife is saying, you need help, I want you to seek help, or maybe even a family member or friend. And so a lot of the times it just depends on that external or internal motivation for accessing, support from a mental health professional. But once, men are able to access that service, most of the time we are able to gather the information that we need in an interview to better determine, clinically what, diagnosis there might be. And maybe
not, right? Yeah, that's a good point.
And so we want to be very careful in that interview and that assessment to work with them and support them with whoever their supports are, to gain collateral to understand more about their whole life from a perspective and not just that moment in time. And that's where, the experience from a good therapist or counselor comes in, because we want to make sure that we're doing due diligence and really accurately getting the best picture we can to then make the diagnosis that we can to support the treatment that we're going to recommend.
Right. Yeah, and then just kind of assisting through that journey, right? Because it's not like a one and done. It's a real consistent thing that needs to play out. One thing that we can joke about in the men's world is sometimes they're not honest, and sometimes they don't commit. And this is not just relationship issues, this is self issues as well. They might go to a couple meetings and think, oh, I'm good, I'm cured, I'm ready, but there's so much deep rooted things and traumas and things that we have to be mindful that these things take time, and meeting people where they are. There's not a quick fix. I think reminding men that this is a process. You're going to go through a very uncomfortable place, but give it time and stay with it. Stay with your therapy. When I was doing a seminar for the suicide prevention in men group, I classified myself as non-therapeutic. And what that looked like is, people can go see a counselor or a therapist and get like that doctor and that medication and that analysis. But for me, it was like putting guys in a position of casualty, of, non-invasive, that it really, I cannot tell you that when I'm suiting somebody, you would think she's just going to suit them, give them some stuff to go, and they're on their way. I've been in suiting, appointments with my clients, and it turns out to like 2-3 hours because they're crying, or there's something that they want to share, or all of a sudden I didn't know anything really about them until we've discovered an hour into a conversation of molestation, abuse, or traumas. And so putting them in a very casual atmosphere has really allowed people to open up. So do you feel like non-therapeutic can be just as beneficial to legitimate therapy?
Yeah, I mean, come on, getting anybody to talk about problems or things that were real pervasive with stress in their life is actually therapeutic, right?
Yeah.
I do it as a debrief and a process with staff all the time, but in a client situation, the real difference is that processing, in treatment where, we use evidence-based practices and approaches to basically go through a treatment format, in establishing a treatment plan and goals that we're going to work on. And I think, knowing you, Nicole, specifically too, and the history we have, you have that just like natural ability to be empathetic with people and show that natural, empathy and good listening skills that I'm sure that you're able to gain information and insight into people, and they naturally want to open up to you. And I think in those moments of, humbleness and, sometimes even sadness, maybe, that you're sitting with, it is a great moment to say, hey, I know of this resource that might be helpful for you. And here's this contact information. And, if you need me to help you follow up or to do what you need to do to get you there, let me help you. But those moments you might, continue to encounter as you go on and you're able to support these men as you are.
Yeah, it was kind of funny that you say that because, back in high school, as we're doing like our senior projects and we want to discover what we want to be when we grow up, I always wanted to get into counseling. I always wanted to be like a high school counselor or really mentor, because I always had the compassion and the love and just the ability to just, I'm non-judgmental. I think that is a real gift, because we do live in this kind of crazy world of we're always judged. I mean, even appearance, we make fun of each other. There's things that are said. I mean, there's bullying on social media over just things that people are sharing is somebody else is jabbing at. So that we know that, it's messy. And so I always had a desire to do that. Unfortunately, life took me other places. And so it's kind of neat to see how I full circled back into a real passion of mine, and really creating this space, because I recognized you've met my brother and his charismatic just attitude and just his smile and just his energy was just so fun to be around. And when this all happened, it was like, why, right? We all have these questions, why? And it didn't make sense. So I knew that there was something deep rooted in myself that I had to find an answer. And once I kind of started to see things come to light, I was like, okay, this is where I need to be. And it is natural for people to share and to talk. But when you're an empath, you do take on that energy sometimes. And I learned that with my support group when I was leading a support group. So how do you counsel counselors when you're in your position now where you're seeing the people who are seeing the clients and you're making sure they're mental straight? Because when I was leading and facilitating a suicide bereavement support group, it was hard because you're hearing these stories. It's hard not to get attached to your people. You all have some type of community or relation. And I would go home and cry and cry and cry over other people's story, let alone my own. And I remember the first time where I didn't cry and I thought there was something wrong with me. So, but I just realized that's part of the process of healing. So in your position and you now being overlooking your supervisors doing the clinicals, how does that work? I mean, who counsels them?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I do work for an agency that really believes in taking care of our mental health. I always say, it's kind of cheesy, but mental health is just as important as physical health.
Yeah, it is.
And so I really preach that. And we do, as an agency, offer quite a few paid days off per year to help support with that outside of our paid time off. But I definitely do a lot of debriefing. We have 5 voluntary crisis homes throughout the state that I oversee, and those are a step down from an ER visit. So really, if clients aren't wanting to go to that medical ER field to get that mental health support, they can come stay at the crisis house for up to 5 to 7 days.
Okay.
And so it's 24-hour care. It's very intensive, but that's where we see a lot of our suicidal ideation clients, homicidal ideation. And that's where we get the more intense need for staff to debrief outside of our outpatient type of programming. And we just allow space. We take time. I meet with them weekly, the program leads, to talk about certain client cases and difficult scenarios. But just giving space is important, and listening, and then offering feedback and support when it's needed. But really, we as mental health professionals really have to check in with ourselves too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because we work with the most vulnerable population, with severe and persistent mental illness every day, and that can get very, very overwhelming.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you could see yourself taking that home. Only because it's emotional. I mean, if you're somebody who, obviously you wouldn't be in this field if this was just a great job as far as pay. When you get into these fields, and I strongly believe anybody who is in counseling, any type of social service, nonprofits, anything like that generate community and people, you do it with compassion. And it's really hard sometimes because we take that emotion, we feel for them. And so you're right. I think being able to recognize when you have a staff kind of feeling some certain way, or maybe they're off because they've just taken on a lot, that's like a superhero type, thing. We got to find a way to really allow them to decompress, because it's really important, especially in the field that you're in. You're no good to anybody if you're not good, right? And so to be able to be present.
I can give you a better example. So, my history and my story, but I'll share a little bit tonight with everyone.
Okay.
I in 2019, I experienced, my father taking his own life. And it was very traumatic for me, as any, suicide
absolutely.
is for anybody that has had that experience that close to them. And, for me, that was a pivotal turning point in my career. I was working in direct practice. I was working at a high school. And then I was also doing chemical dependency evaluations with clients that are needing to access addiction-based services as well. So I was doing both at the same time. And I really had to check myself. Because I was not doing good after my dad's
Absolutely.
death. And I was faced with depression and anxiety, psychosis, addiction, all these things that these clients were bringing to me every day. And I just wasn't able to be me, and to be the therapist that I knew that I needed to be present for my clients. And so that was really a take charge moment for me in my life, to say, I need to pull up my big girl pants and take a step back from this and reevaluate whether I can do direct care. I know it's in my heart and it's my passion, but I wasn't in the right space to be able to provide that care for the people that I was working with. So that is actually when I decided to move into the supervisor role, and oversee the clinical staff that works with the clients directly. And so for me, that was a big deal. And right now I'm okay. I'm okay working in the capacity that I am. And I feel like I can, give back with my experience and my own, life struggles, and where I am today, specifically because of, the things that I've been through, and help support those staff to really empower them to know, hey, if you need to take a step back, it's okay.
Yeah.
And we'll get through this together. So it actually, is very, very forefront in my mind when working with
And it's nice that you have a staff and a company that you work for that understands that to the fullest. There wasn't any pushback on making changes or needing time. You felt very supported. And then being able to make a real, decision for yourself. I mean, that's huge, especially with, working in jobs that, you feel like you're afraid to make different moves because it might affect other things. And we just kind of eggshell walk. And so it can be very intimidating. And so kudos to you for acknowledging that and seeing that. And then thank, the company you work for to allowing you to be in a better space and to move on with your career at your pace when it was right. I will never forget when you had called me. I had no idea what to expect, but I heard the pain inside of you, and that broke my heart because we've grown up together. We've had a lot of, great times. We've raised our kids, like we go way back, and to have another connection on such a tragedy, it was hard. It was so hard to hear that pain and kind of go through that for myself, because it's never easy, and we know that there's no closure, right? We feel like it's going to be a forever open wound. And, the fact that you are in mental health, do you ever feel like you missed something? Or, some people feel the guilt, and I did for a while, because I'm like, I just saw you the night before. Like, what did I miss? Right. And so for a long time, I felt like I didn't do my job. I didn't see something, and I had to kind of play old tapes. And so how do you work through that, being in the field that you're in?
Right? How do you do
Yeah, I
that?
know. It's a god awful feeling. Like I couldn't, when you called me, I was just like, no, not you, because you're so dedicated and you're so on it with your clients. And this just goes to show nobody's exempt from this type of pain and loss. But we can't take on that responsibility.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
That you nailed it there. I didn't understand that when it first happened.
Of course.
My dad was as you know, he was really the driving factor that pushed me to want to even embark on a career in mental health and addiction-based services, because he had struggled since I was little,
yeah,
little girl, all of my life, and he never stopped struggling, and it was just one of those things that he had basically a schizophrenia diagnosis, and also substance use. So he dabbled with drugs and alcohol for years, and that's usually what we see a lot of the times. In these generational areas where people who, have a psychosis diagnosis, depression, bipolar, we see a lot of substance use and abuse within that, because it's a lot easier to self-medicate than it is to really,
go through
address the problem head on, right?
Yeah.
And so he just really struggled for so many years, and he finally got out of the prison system in California, and had been on parole there for 12 years.
Wow.
Released in 2019, and my grandmother, his mom, pushed him to come to Montana, and so I embraced him and wanted to wrap around supports because I knew how to do that. Right. So yeah, why couldn't I do that?
Right. I can help. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why can't I? And so, it really is a testament that, regardless of who you are or what position you're in, you could be a doctor even. And, we really are only able to help as much as people will let us.
Yes.
And we aren't here or aren't able to push people to make decisions for themselves. They have to make those decisions.
Yeah.
and we have to be there to support them and be next to them. And I was only able to do so much, with him because he didn't want to help himself.
Right.
And that was where he was at. He felt like his life would be easier if it was just ended and not anymore. And so for me, it was very hard to overcome those feelings of guilt and letdown and shame behind, me not being able to be this professional helper.
Right.
That
you don't have a magic wand.
So,
yeah.
it was a very, very hard time. And I was very fortunate to have a great group of supports here to wrap around me specifically.
Yeah.
But, I think it is something that I still struggle with.
Of course.
Today. I mean, and then I probably will carry with me. But I get peace in knowing that, he's in a better place.
Yeah.
And that he, ultimately chose this for himself. And I think that's one of the things that, when we talk about suicide prevention and education and all these areas, we fail to address that this is people's lives and they get to make that choice.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we can just sit back and try to do and prevent and educate as much as we can, but it's ultimately their choice. And really nothing is going to stop them.
Right.
If that is their intent and plan. And we just unfortunately have to be there and support as much as we can, but it's ultimately their choice.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that a lot when I'm still facilitating now, but when you get these groups and you hear these different stories, I mean, there's all types of scenarios and positions that have happened. The ultimate thing happens, right? We know suicide is the ultimate thing. But to hear some of the stories that lead up to that, whether it be multiple times of trying to commit, if they want to, they will. And there would be nothing you could do. They're going to just find an opportunity when it's clear, the coast is clear, and that's just what they're going to do. There's no stopping that. And like you said, you nailed it when you said, we just got to be supportive in their struggles and in their space, and hope and pray that they don't make that decision, because of course we love them and we want them here. I've recognized also that it's never just like, I lost my job, suicide. I've said this before. It's not drastic. There is an internal mess that is rupturing like a volcano. And, again, if they're not willing to discuss it and talk about it, if they're not willing to get help, if they're not willing to step back and reflect and make positive changes in their life, choose different support groups. There's so many things that can be done. But if they choose to do none of that, it's like shaking up a pop can and opening it up. You're going to break. You're going to go there. So, yes, just being very mindful of that. And I struggled with that for a while. I don't anymore, because you're right. Like, this was a choice. And it's unfortunate that it led to that. My family still hurts and will continue to hurt for the rest of our lives because of that choice. So being mindful that, and this can kind of be off record. So again, this just shows in just everyday life how we should treat people, because you just don't know how close somebody is to an edge emotionally and mentally. I think just doing our part in showing support, because again, it's their choice, and we just need to be the loving people. I always speak, if we don't speak love, it dies. And I just can't pledge that enough, because people are hurting, and choices are being made that will impact forever. It's that quote, temporary feelings, the, permanent decision or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's kind of in that realm. And it's very true. So just be mindful of how we treat one another, and I think it goes a long way. But, with that, so now that we've got a couple years and you're feeling pretty good and life has changed, what are your goals with, just moving forward and you got going on, like in the victories of everything?
Yeah, thanks. I think I really believe in our community mental health center and where we're going. We just got a $4 million grant from SAMHSA.
Woohoo, that's good.
We're in our first year of a 4-year grant cycle with them to integrate primary care services into our behavioral health services.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really exciting, and I'm a big participant of that groundbreaking care that we're providing for clients. So I think I'll try to stick it out a little bit longer, but I always said, by the time I'm 50, I'm doing private practice, and I want to be somewhere warm.
Well, here's not the place. You know that.
I mean, I've been traveling quite a bit lately,
yeah,
and trying to find my niche in the world of where I want to rest and be.
Yeah.
But definitely somewhere warm and still providing care, for clients. I've always been drawn to the veteran population.
Absolutely. Yeah.
My husband's a veteran.
Yep.
I started my undergraduate when I have Portland roots.
Yep.
I went to Portland State University in my undergraduate there, and I was the first one at the social work program there that got to do their internship at the VA Medical Center.
Oh, beautiful.
In their mental health department. So that was kind of my groundbreak exposure, and it's never left me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a big passion for serving military families and veterans specifically, and so I don't know, somewhere like Key West,
hey,
on a base. I mean, there's
yeah,
not too bad.
Right. No, somewhere warm, and I could totally see you, running your own ship, because you just have it in you, and you always have inspired me to just, do the work and to be intentional. And so is that how you met your hubby?
No.
Okay. So, but it just kind of ironic how that kind of brought back full circle, right? You found love in that spot. Yeah. So
it's definitely been, a ride with him, because, as we know, veterans tend to,
they're built different. They're built different. Yeah, they are built different.
Also, that camaraderie, they like to be around other veterans and supportive in that aspect, right? And so we've done a lot of grassroots stuff here in Montana, working with Wilderness for Warriors, who are supporting vets, and those kinds of different projects, which has been really exciting. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. I think the population that we as counselors or therapists, can serve. It's just if your intentions are there.
Right.
Your work is, one where we can come full front and be non-judgmental, get rid of all biases that we might, have, and work through that before we're able to be with and present with the client. I think that, you've really met a good counselor.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, and again, you might go through like a few of them to find the one, right? Absolutely. And that's part of the process as well. Yeah. And I think that can be very...
And you don't like them or you don't buy.
Right. It's okay.
Move on.
Yeah, you want somebody who's going to have your back and to understand you fully so you can get the treatment, so you can get to where you want to be. And I think that even... that's very difficult, because as we're talking about how men don't really share certain things, they might have like one counseling encounter and they're like, oh, not for me. It's not going to work, because they just can't see it all the way through. Right. But you have to encourage and to say, stay on the course, because if this person doesn't work out, something will, and you will find that person who will be completely built for what you have going on, and for who's going to be able to, like you said, non-biased, non-judgmental, really be an advocate in your situation. So guys, we got to really understand that when you're going into any type of therapy and heading in that direction, first of all, notice that you might need it, and that's totally okay. The saying it's okay to not be okay. Getting yourself the first step, making that connection, finding a counselor, and being patient with the process, allowing you to meet people where you are. If it doesn't work with one person, keep trying. You will find somebody who will really, get you in a good space and to really help you through your things. And it's the course. It's time. And stick with it. Stay committed to it, because it's ultimately you. It's your health care. It's, your self-love. Like you said, Jill, earlier, it's like you see all these Instagram fitness models, but we don't see inside these brains. We don't see what people are really digging into. And so as much as you want to physically look good on the outside, there is always work to do on the inside, but just stay on the course of making that commitment for yourself. It's very important. So yeah, I hope the guys that are listening will take the initiative, because I was also seeing recently on Instagram that, guys aren't even going to the doctors regularly, like physicals. And then you're finding out things too late. And so what would be kind of like maybe not so much the mental, therapy of that, but what would you even suggest on just physical, like staying healthy in general?
Right. And that's, I don't know how many men that I know, they won't go to the doctors unless their wives or girlfriends make them.
Yeah.
An appointment, schedule it, say, this is to show up at this time and this is where.
Yeah.
And that is something that, we as a society need to do better at.
Yeah.
Is taking those pressures off of men to understand that their bodies and their mental health wellness is just as important as anybody else's in this world.
Yeah.
And, really, understanding that it's a form of self-love
Yeah.
and self-care, And, I will say, too, there's always that caveat of, like, I can't afford to go to the doctor. I can't afford to go see a counselor. But let me tell you, there is so many different programs that are available. And it just takes one question.
Yeah.
Really. And it's like, do you have a sliding fee scale?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have, if I don't have health insurance, is there a different form of method of payment that I can make to get access to these services?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, most every single clinic these days in our society will have some form of reduced payment option that is available.
Yeah.
And so that tends to be a barrier too. Just that access to the health insurance and coverage that is often needed. And so, I think it's up to us to do our due diligence to inform and educate about different clinics and areas that, may offer that service or support, or to be able to understand how to sit down and help someone fill out a Medicaid application.
Yeah, that's a real struggle. I've heard that in a lot of just different talks I've had, different podcasts, where we see men struggling on that level. They don't feel like they can afford it. They may feel like, even like in custody cases or court cases, those papers are so ridiculous. It's not black and white. There's so much in these things that are redundant. It's really the same question, but just asked a little differently. And it's so, hectic. And in someone's mind who isn't really geared to work in hectic situations, it can be almost like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to give up. This is too much. So now you got men who are not showing up for appointments. You got men who are not showing up for court. You got men who are not showing up for custody battles, all because of the misunderstanding of how we can really help support. We can ask for sliding scale. We can ask somebody to help you with paperwork. If you ask, it's like closed mouths don't get fed. So they have to be able to ask for that, so then we can be the help. If somebody wasn't in a relationship, they don't have a wife, they don't have a girlfriend, they don't have maybe that woman's support. I think it's huge to have women's support. I have a son, you have sons. So when you're looking at kind of like the dynamic of somebody didn't have somebody, like us, what would you recommend them to do? Because maybe they don't have those resources, I mean, I guess we just have to kind of that's where the community needs to step up. And this is why we're having this conversation, right? This is why two women are having this acknowledgement of what men can do. We're giving options, but we're also saying, hey, we are here to walk through the journey. Ask and you shall, hopefully get some help. So would that kind of be a good...
Yeah. I mean, anybody you can trust
Yeah.
to talk to or talk with. And sometimes people don't have anybody.
Yeah.
But, just confiding in someone the need, right? Or the idea that maybe this is something that I need access to or support with. And then confiding in that person that you trust and can rely on to help navigate maybe the systems. Because the systems are the biggest barrier.
Yeah.
And those, unfortunately, we can't change.
Right.
But we can change the way that we're talking with people.
Yeah.
And that we're being available and that we're being open to listen to people's struggles and help support them with next steps that we may know, right, how to access that they might not know.
Correct.
And so I think really it's just about being open and with who you can share that vulnerability with and feel comfortable and confident in doing that.
Yeah. There's a few things that people, I think we all, women and men, we can all say that there's three common denominators of which we all need. We all have the need to be heard. We all have the need to be respected, and we all have the need to be loved. And those are just key values that if we practice and we commit to, I think this world would be a lot better in self-advocating and just really supporting one another. I'm just blessed to have so many good people in my corner as I go through things myself and have the support that I've had through my situations. And so that's why it was very important for me to find a way to give back to such a devastating part of my life, so nobody else felt that way. I can say that I did what I could do, and I took it a step further, and I want to help as many men feel empowered and self-advocating, not just looking good and feeling good, but to really be the best you can be. Yeah.
Absolutely. I am so proud of you.
Oh, thanks.
I will never forget when you had talked to me about this idea.
I know, right?
And, like this just big idea, right?
Yeah.
Passion behind it, big idea. I'm jumping in. I am, sink or swim right now.
Yeah.
You were just going to jump in.
Yeah.
And, I mean, honestly, you inspire me.
Oh.
And the motivation and the passion and the dedication that you have to this mission that you are, being present for and with these men in your community.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things as, a woman, we have this stigma around these stereotypes. Like, why does this woman want to help these men?
Yeah.
We need to break those barriers, talk about these things,
Yeah.
Really normalize that it's okay as women to support men.
Yeah.
They carry burdens and pressures that we need to assist with.
Yeah.
And be there.
The help, right? Yeah.
I'm just so proud of you.
Thank
what
you.
You're doing. And I will talk with you and support you in whatever I need to because I believe in this.
Yeah.
And, I really want to, offer just that normalization that, like I say, our mental health is just as important as our medical and our physical health.
Yeah.
We go to the doctor for checkups. We go to the dentist for checkups. But we don't do a very good job of taking care of our mental health and checking in with a professional.
Yeah.
And there's so many, the pandemic really opened up the opportunity to, make counseling a little less, confrontational.
Yeah.
I go and sit in, this shrink, so to say, office for an hour. They've got a notepad. We all watch movies and we have these ideas, but the internet is really booming right now with all these different online texting, all these opportunities to really present and support clients with where they're at and what they need. So
yeah, it's really funny you say that, because it's almost like you have no excuse. Oh, I can't make my appointment. No, it's fine. We got a Zoom link. Just tap into your email. You know what I mean? Like it's harder to back out of things, and I think that's great though, because it keeps us accountable. It keeps us going, because having these options, if somebody couldn't make it, or it's like, no, we can do a Zoom, or we can do all these different things. So it does kind of, like you said, break that down a little bit, so it becomes easier to still support you. There's no backing out. So
yes, easier access.
Yeah.
Right? Easier access for people means that they might show up.
Yeah.
And they might engage in with. And if you don't like someone that you meet with the first time, don't give up.
Yeah. Keep going.
I want to encourage and support anybody who's listening tonight just to, put their mental health first. And if you feel like you need that extra support that maybe you're not getting from your family or friends, or just need to work with a professional to maybe work through some childhood things, or some traumatic events in your life, to move forward for yourself, because it really is self-love and care. Get access, reach out, ask for numbers, support, help in your current area. We know that pretty soon, I think maybe this July, we're going to have our national suicide prevention hotline go live with the 988 information, so that is really easier access too, right? Like, we've always had to memorize like this 1-800 number for like Lifeline,
right?
For suicide, hotline, and now we will have a national standard number of 988 that we'll be able to dial in and get those same people on the line to help if there's that need. Yeah.
And I'm so glad to hear that, because I start to feel like when I hear stuff like that, what, Lines for Life is doing, what, you guys are opening up, and obviously other people probably around the country really deciding to give this a full, means, is super impactful, because we want to see, obviously, the reduce rate of suicide in general. I've had people call me recently who have lost people, so we know that it's still there. Again, it is a choice, but when you have an abundance of access, support, and resources, we're doing the work, and people will show up. And I just feel like you can't have enough. And so I built these packets to send into, different institutions that just allowed people in my community, whether it be healthcare, counseling, recovery, housing, all these just really great resources, to packet them, because one person may not know all of that, right? And the only way we're going to know what's out there is if we share as leaders and people who are doing the work, to share what we got going on, but then to also make it available to those who need it. And so providing these packets for me was a kind of a great kind of touch, because it allowed me to say, you may not need everything in here, but here's a starting point. And we're on your journey with you. And they have people's names and contacts that we can then kind of vessel. And I'm just really excited to see the work, the years before us, to continue in growth and, making the impact that we want to make. So I really appreciate you coming on tonight. It's been such a long time since I got to see your beautiful face, miss you and the family, and definitely, as things, we'll put your information up so people can look at different things as well. You mentioned the hotline, easy access number. So just putting that available too, so when that does open up, they have another resource and access. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to Elevate Him. That is a wrap. Until next time, thank you. Hey, what's up? It's Nicole Brewster, also known as Coco. Thank you for tapping into the Elevate Him podcast. Until next time.